first let's talk about like what went right. So for you, SGA, it didn't seem like you were concerned about his injury coming into the season. You had him ranked 17th, which was the most aggressive out of anyone. The next closest to you was 24. Obviously, he outperformed even your expectations, but still, what made you think that he was going to go off to the tune of being a second round value?
I just thought his usage when he was on the floor last season, the usage, the efficiency, not much of a 3-point shooter, but he shoots the ball so well from 2 and from the foul line that he more than makes up for that. The numbers across the board, I think the preseason conversation around SGA and the Thunder in general is that, they're going to tank. And I think people need to really properly define what it means to tank. Like, nobody's tanking from day one.
Right.
So you can't assume that at all. So that's why I had him at that point. I kind of hedged my bet, so to speak, having him at 17 as opposed to, say, in the top 10.
But did you want to make him top 10?
I thought about it. That may have been where some of that tanking conversation influenced my placement of him. But again, I just think it's one of those situations where we can all learn the lesson to not assume things based on what we think is going to happen with a team. Oh, they don't look good on paper, they're not going to try. That's not true at all. These guys all have a salary to make. So as long as we keep that in mind, I think we'll be fine. But that was kind of my thinking with SGA.
Now, when you're putting together your rankings, do you usually account for? Are you more so thinking on a per game value basis, or are you also factoring in the totality of how healthy can this guy be? Because you just talked about tanking. You discounted SGA a little bit because of the risk of tanking. Do you usually do a combination of that, depending on the player, or how's that really work for you?
I think it depends on the player. I tend to lean more towards the per game, just because that. It tends to be what I play personally in terms of fantasy. Right. So I lean more towards per game than totals. I think totals would be more important if you play like in a roto situation. It's kind of, I guess I'd say it's a mixture, more per game, but also player by player in terms of what they've done in the past too.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think with the ones that are the more injury prone players that, could miss some games, you definitely have to factor that in. I think Kawhi Leonard and Paul George are certainly examples of that. Next player that you got right, Brook Lopez. And I want to talk about Brook Lopez because I was just so off, like not even close. Like, I wasn't the worst. I had him at 164. You were bold enough to have him at 87. And again, like, if you're looking at across the board, all of us analysts were way off, but you were the closest to having some confidence in Brook Lopez this season. So what went to your thought process of putting Brook Lopez that high, a top 90 guy who ultimately finished in the top 30? But you still saw something in him that we didn't.
Yeah, just thought to have the offseason to get healthy. He took that major hit with the back surgery ahead of last season, and we didn't see him on the court very much. I don't think he made his debut until about January, so if I'm not mistaken. So, that may have played into the thinking on the part of a lot of people, but I just felt that with him being healthy, and also that was a point in time when Chris Middleton still wasn't healthy. Completely different games and skill sets, but it's like he may have a few more opportunities offensively, especially the 3-point shooter with Middleton out. So I didn't think there was any way he would be outside of the top 100, but I didn't think he'd be as good as he was, to be honest with you.
Yeah. Top 30 now. And like, he was probably up for Defensive Player of the Year before Jaren Jackson Jr. came back and just started just annihilating defenses with his stock prowess. But yeah, you had another great call that I wanted to highlight. It was Jaren Jackson Jr. I think that you were pretty high on him as well. Despite him coming off of that knee injury, you had him right. Let me see.
I think it was the foot, actually.
Yeah, sorry, the foot. Yeah, the foot injury.
Had him at 55, I want to say.
Trying to find him here. Oh, yeah. So you had him at 55, which was again the most aggressive out of any other analyst. So what was it about JJJ that you felt like, even coming off an injury, that he would still be a top 50 guy?
Yeah, this was one where I really weighed the per game value as opposed to anything else. When he's on the court, he can give you really good, the shooting percentages. The form isn't great, but he finds a way to make those shots at a consistent clip. So you get that, the rebounding, especially the block shots. I think in a situation like that, if you have a player that can get you a minimum of 2 blocks per game, I think he's worth reaching for. Now, he ended up getting 3 from Jaren Jackson Jr., but I think that's one of those categories you play in category leagues where I think it's okay to be a little bit more aggressive in terms of ranking and drafting players.
Yeah, I was just, I don't know what I was thinking. I was probably leaning more towards total value or something, or that maybe it would take them some time, like, resting, load management, coming off of that stress fracture, that he wouldn't pick up. But like, dude, I was off. Was I the worst one on JJ? Let me see.
No, someone had him unranked, and he got 203.
I mean, I was pretty far. Yeah. No, there's a couple. Yeah, there's a few people that were outside of me. I had him at 100, but that was just disrespectful. So lesson learned. You learn your lesson, man. Like, you can't discount somebody that is that dynamic defensively, that can also shoot a 3 and more or less be a pretty efficient basketball player. So yeah, I definitely took my licks on that one.